Pounders, welcome back. And we're excited to be in the streets, back drafting already. We have Battle Royale week 1 this year. And Billy reached out to me and basically said, hey, I studied a bunch of the data from last year's Battle Royales, and he pulled a ton of different data points that are going to help you guys grab an edge in this year's contest. So I am excited to reintroduce Billy back to the channel. Billy, now a married man, you're glowing. You're glowing, my friend.
Yeah, I've reached another level now, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
ready to win everything. Yeah, this can be a good season.
Well, the stakes are higher. The wedding isn't going to
hmm
pay for itself. So the battle royales, now he's squeezing every little bit of EV out of it. Some of this data has been highly impressive from when I've looked at it, and it is funny. Some is sort of confirming priors, which is always nice. But now you get to see it for real. And what are some of the most surprising points before we get into it? Maybe something that you weren't expecting to see when you dove in.
Well, so like I when I reached out to you at first, I was like, has anyone done anything with this? Because I wanted to see if people had poked around this data. I knew that it was dropped on Underdog's website a little while ago, actually. And you're like, I just don't think so. So I started from like step zero, like what structure do we play with? What's being played the
Mm,
most? And so on. So the methodology I went with was relatively simple. Just kind of split it by a bunch of different categories: structure, day of week, when you drafted your quarterback, and so on. And then looked at how often those type of teams were hitting top 10, top 25 outcomes. Because that's when, if you look at the battle royales, that's when the payout starts to become like increasing at numbers where you're like, oh wow, I'm gonna have a good week, kind of numbers. But then
hell yeah.
top 1% and top 10% to get some level of like aggregation of like good outcomes, but and that's like a cash line and so on. So just giving you ways to kind of slice the data, and also threw in some visuals. I did think that like we kind of all agree that the structure is like there's some options here, but it is really interesting to see how much of the population draft two running backs. It was just so standout. But then it also performs really well. So it does ask you questions of like, is it the people that know what to do or so on?
Mm,
But no, I thought it was all really good. And I think we should just jump right into it.
let's go. All right. So slide number 1 is focused on structure. It's your team comp, and this is not too surprising. Like you said, you have the 1-1-2-2. This is tight ends. It's going to be very, very low hit rate. I think we discussed it beforehand. Last week, it was the Dog Bowl week that every tight end decided to score a 2-touchdown game. The Jags game goes into overtime. Evan Ingram scores a game winner. Njoku had like 9 for 120 and 2 touchdowns by halftime. So this is probably in 1 week. Maybe they snuck in another spot. Uh, the 1-1-3-1 with the receivers, and then the running back double RB. So the RB in the flex at 60%. What's the most surprising here? Do you think there is a clear winner at RB based on what percent are drafting it? If there's a higher percent drafting it, higher likelihood of hitting, is there still an advantage?
It well, so as when you play, and then also this will be slate dependent. So if you want to bump over, I think one or two visuals on this one more. Um, Yeah, so this is how like the rain actually one is there one more? No, back one, sorry. The
Back one.
scatter plot. So on the bottom, so your x-axis here is showing the ownership. So the range of like the orange, which is your receivers, like it can be
Mm,
as low as like people playing at a 25% rate, but also some weeks that the receivers is like kind of the better way to play it. But then you're also seeing like running backs, kind of the ownership floats anywhere from 50% upwards to 70%. So knowing the slate is going to be important because like this current slate, there are so many running backs you can kind of pivot to later that'll be
oh yeah.
like really good plays that the significant ownership stuck like shoved around the 1-2-2 doesn't really feel that bad because you get there's like within it you get to a lot of like other plays. but some weeks that 1-2-2 may be consolidated around a couple like options, and that's it. So I think that knowing when you can pivot off of it, but I think this also shows that both are kind of viable depending on the week, even though the 1-2-2 might in general be better.
Mm. I do appreciate that you show the ownership and draft percent, which can lead to why we're seeing a little more 1-2-2, but also it's easier to hit in those running backs, getting those 2 touchdown games, half point PPR, and those scrolls. And we'll get into that. But there are so many scroll options, especially on a week where there's no buys. You have starting running backs going undrafted. Someone maybe not as sexy as like Devin Singletary should see pretty big usage week 1, but going to be undrafted. So very, very interesting. And we'll actually get into what round you should draft your quarterback and what percent that's hitting. But I think it's also going to be important for next year to compare these exact data sets to last year's, to this year and next year. It's going to be even better. Did you want to
But
go
in
over the top?
general, I think in general, just directionally, building portfolios centered around like 1-2-2. Like if I was like you thinking 100 drafts, I would
Mhm.
like to have more running back centric builds, and then I'm gonna filter in some like wide receivers that I might dabble with a double tight end if the slate hits it right. But like
Definitely.
I think that with like just zooming out, like I think that'd be a great way to start to review your tool, your drafts is not just what player exposures, but what structure exposures are you getting to as like a portfolio. You got a great website for that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Bestballoverlay.com, promo code Pounders. No, we'll show it off in a little bit, but
Mhm.
I do agree. Like, I want a large portion of my drafts to be 1-2-2-1. Um, I mean, the data is pretty overwhelming on it.
Mhm.
It's 22% higher, and this is going to be higher than the draft percent, if I had to guess, ownership percent of those builds. But yeah, eventually Josh is going to be coming out with a portfolio optimizer tool strictly for the Battle Royale contest that should be coming soon. Just so many updates he's been pushing through. It's been
Mhm.
a wild ride on the website. But did you want to explain top 25 rate, top 1% rate, these columns?
Yeah. So that's just how often that structure hit that number. It's not dependent on. It's not like total count. It is okay if there's a significantly more 1-2-2s the denominator, and it's a ratio. So this just means that even though it is significantly more, it's also significantly better, like performing all those that dark color at the bottom. So as we started off with the top 25 is when you start to get material like payouts. The top
Mm,
1% and the top 10% rates are when like you're looking at like much better like high end outcomes, but you want to give better summary statistics and also can like be
yep,
the bottom cash line that you can also use that as a good like cut line for that too.
I like that. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, top 1%. It's you're typically like one piece. You're
Mm-hmm.
one piece away from being in that top 10. Um, so very very interesting as you see it just all increase. Have you drawn any conclusions from the jump of 0.037 to 0.051 versus the top 10% rate?
Um, I mean, some parts of I think the hard part with the top 25 rate is just going to be a smaller sample that those numbers are going to be kind of working around. But I still think that like again, directionally, it's all pointing the same way. So I think
Mm,
that okay, at the highest of outcome level and then at its base level, it all is shifted up. So I think okay, 1-2-2, 1-2-2-1. I just like it as a structure, and the data supports that.
yeah,
Hmm. And then, so what this did is just that.
sweet.
Okay, that's just again another way to look at how the performance was is like
Yeah.
a range per the weeks, and yeah, you can see that that double running back did really well.
Draft those two RBs, guys. At least a good
Yeah.
portion of if you're going to If you're going to draft 100 BRs every week, what would your portfolio look like for the 1-1-3-1 and the 1-2-2-1?
I think it's got to be like significantly weighted to those double running backs. And that's one of the things I wanted to have a conversation about is, I mean, the week to week, it's going to be a balance, but it's somewhere 60, 70% of those um,
Yeah.
double running backs. And I think
Yeah.
that, you know how like in best ball, where like we default wide receiver, and then once the value comes up in our face, we do the running back. It
Yes.
almost kind of feels like that, like it's the flip here. It's like you're going to default like these other better like optimal plays, and then if like these outrageous wide receiver values slap you in the face, you just kind of build it.
Hmm.
I kind of feel like
Yeah.
that's like
Yep.
a
Yep.
good way to think of it.
And then get that scroll wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We'll see that the data supports the scroll. How many scrolls? We'll find out.
Yeah.
Day of the week. And this is kind of fun to look at. Which day should you be drafting? I wonder, did you also have what percent of drafts are filling on these days? Did you have
Well,
data
yeah, so
behind that?
that'd be like your
Is that
usage rate. So
okay?
when
Okay.
in here is so that's like your frequency. So it definitely fills later in the week. You can see
Mm-hmm.
not you can get a little bit of volume in after it opens up right away. It's Tuesday it increases every single day up until Saturday is your biggest day, and then Sunday you just don't have as much time. But it's wild on a half a day. You feel like almost what's a
The
full
overlay
day.
chasers, they all come
Yeah,
in, and but you also
yeah.
have the most information.
Yeah, and so what I found interesting, so if you look at like your top 25%, top 25 rate and your top 1% rate, your true outlier outcome, like you're not really seeing any trend here, right? It's pretty flat, like it's kind of random, like I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The top
Yeah.
10%, so looking so your most base improves as you get later in the week. I think that makes a ton of sense to where like, okay, that you can still build a mammoth team early, you can build a mammoth team late. It's just gonna that'll happen, but your base, your average, your is going to improve as you get more information. You kind of some of the bad plays. You drafted T. Higgins, oh shit! Like you maybe have to
Exactly.
figure that.
Exactly. We're
Like that team is less
yeah.
stellar than it would be if you were sitting here
Yes.
today drafting a
Yes.
team. So I think this is interesting if you're going to be playing like the double up contest. If you
Mm-hmm.
can have really good ranks, maybe auto, and come in late in the week, like you're gonna have just an information edge, and that could just help you
Yeah.
2% in each
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bankroll boost each week.
It makes sense, especially yeah. It's all pretty much the same here, but where you draw the line is like more information here on the far right, top 10%. Like if Chase is
Mm-hmm.
out, you have 1 out of 6 teams that are going to underperform, most likely, unless their player swap
Mm-hmm.
is a big brain. Um, and then the more information, we actually get some little week 1 news from James. Russ officially out for week 1. Fire up Justin Fields now in BRs. It's gonna be a
Puke.
wild ride. It's gonna be a wild ride. Oh my. Um, I I think you can pull other important data points from the weekly schedule based on it would be harder to find, but like how many
Mm-hmm.
people are getting unique combinations on Monday on fresh ADPs that you can't get on Tuesday, or you're less likely to get on Tuesday or Wednesday because they rise to a point where now you need players to reach for you to get those combos. I think that's the advantageous part of drafting on
Mm-hmm.
Monday. You should be looking to draft those risers and get those combinations of players that you won't be able to get on Wednesday, and then really target those pretty heavy. Um, Anything else for drafting early in the week versus later that you could see as an advantage?
I think that makes sense. If you're this is showing is like as a whole population, the early versus late. But if you're being
Yeah,
intentional with those early picks, you can take
yeah,
a lot of advantage of stuff. Um, so yeah, what you're saying makes a ton of sense to me.
yeah. Very interesting though. Even across the
Mhm.
board. I mean, maybe Wednesday is a little a little unlucky here for some top 25 rate, but yeah, really cool stuff.
Is it like the worst ADPs have gotten sharp, but it's only sharp people playing, and then you also still could
Yeah,
get fucked.
yeah, yeah,
So who
yeah,
knows?
yeah. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, so
Pretty
pretty
flat.
even across the board. I like that one. That was a good thought slide right there.
Hmm.
That's a good thought slide. Now pick slot. Would you like to cover this for the peeps?
Well, so you're not seeing a usage rate here because every 1 through 6 is always picked. Like everyone, there's only so
Mhm.
you can't have any non-standard distribution here. But so and you see here outrageous performance from the 1 and 2 hole, and the best thing you can
Thanks,
do is just
CMC.
run good, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it also tells me that like the best plays are the best plays, and because of the way that we play this format, the best player can only be 16% owned. I think
Yeah.
is what it is, right? So, in whereas in the traditional DFS, a player can run up 30, 40, 50% ownership, and so on. And so it's just the best play, the playing the best plays and kind of not overthinking it. If the market agrees it's right, then kind of just do it. Is what this tells me a lot of the way, a lot of the time. I'm wondering also how much of this is a function, because I do think that like how much if this is a function of like what happens at 2-3 too.
Mhm.
But no, I think that that's what my
It's
takeaway was.
a lot of this has to be. I remember there was quite a few weeks last year where it was like, okay, if you didn't get CMC, if you didn't get the one spot, you're basically you're basically toast. Um, Tyreek Hill was obviously in that conversation on a lot of slates as well, and you see that jump of the 1 and 2. I mean,
But
is this a
also,
spot where we trust ADP on underdog for the BRs? And if Tyreek Hill 101 this week, if you don't select Tyreek Hill, you're giving up quite a bit of EV.
I think so, at least at the top. So like the top plays are the top plays. And then does it mean that at the back that you need to pull maybe one or two more levers to get your team
Mm,
up through the ranks because you're already playing down like a stroke, essentially, is an interesting way to think about it. But I also think, okay, like if I'm just gonna, especially at the top of the value, just the top of the draft, just eat up a ton of value and kind of call it a day. So yeah, that was at least my take.
no, I like that point. And how do we make up for not having Tyreek Hill on the week 1 slate?
Hmm.
That's an interesting way to think too. And the pick slot performance, and you see it
Hmm.
actually pretty
Just clear
symmetrical
as day.
going down. Um, yeah, it's kind of punishing in a way on those weeks
Hmm.
that you have negative variance on pick slot and you can't get the 101 or the 102. You have 100 drafts and you're way under the 16% ownership. It does feel bad, but it's not always guaranteed. Like there are weeks that they miss or that they're suboptimal. Especially, I feel like on the first couple weeks where there's no buys, a lot can
Hmm.
happen with that many active players. A lot can happen.
Yeah, and I don't ever like. I mean, like I hate to run bad, but if you play this game for long enough, it's gonna be flat. Like if you're the grand scheme of things,
Yeah,
um, I think it's just kind of a noteworthy point. Just play the top of the board and just call it a day.
yeah, yeah. Right. Don't try to balance. Just
Hmm.
keep scooping Tyreek Hill. Ah
Yeah.
man. All right. And I've been sort of a spoon this week on my ownership with the 101. So hopefully it's a
Hmm.
101 week. Um, Here, I'll let you take away the ADP gain loss bucket slide.
Yeah, so there's a couple questions about this when I posted the tweet. Essentially, what I did here is just looked at raw picks gain. So if you had Tyreek at the 1.2 or whatever he is right now, and you picked him at 5, you're getting like almost 4 picks of value. And then you just aggregate that across the whole team. And then you say, okay, if you're a plus ADP value team, you GM'd like crazy on that roster, you're going to be a plus 1, 2, or 3. And then if you just went kind of nutty and you said like ADP is flat wrong, I'm just going to pick my guys, you're going to be on the negative side. Um, so that's what then I bucketed it. So if you only had like 1 or 2 or negative 1 or 2 picks, then you're going to be in that group 0. And then if you were really high on the positive or high on the negative, you were towards the -5 or the 3 or something like that. So then I saw how those groups did. What you can see here from a usage perspective, most of the people are either going to be gaining a little bit of value or losing a little bit of value or just flat zero. People kind of stick in the middle. But then from like a performance perspective, kind of across the board, if you gained a ton of ADP value, you are doing really well. So it is very valuable just to be like, play the best plays. If the room's going to give it to me, I'll take it. Okay, that's awesome. Love that. Go ahead.
Do you draw that conclusion? The earlier the ADP, the earlier the rounds, the even more important it is to scoop that ADP value.
I didn't do any sort of like value the higher picks higher than I did like lower picks. That's something I want to kind of do next. Didn't really have too much time. I got married like
yeah, give him a break.
Yeah, I did this as like a me at night messing around with data to like kind of relax, and then while get the process of planning the wedding. So this was I don't know. It was like, do I need to create a pick value curve? I'm just not going to do that. This will get the job done.
I think you could reasonably draw the conclusion, like if it's showing that ADP value is giving you a higher median floor, it's also giving you a higher top 1% rate, everything across the board. We know from regular season long best ball that if you're getting ADP values earlier in those early rounds, it's even more important. So I would think the same is true, especially with this data for battle royales. If you have pick 6 fall to pick 13 back to the 1 spot, it's probably important to scoop. But
yeah, absolutely. It'd be weird for it not to be aligned the same way.
Yeah.
And especially with this is the information that's telling us. So yeah, ADP value, you build mega teams, works really, really well. Okay, so that's one side of the argument. Do you want to go to the other side of the argument?
Yeah. Well, you have -3 at pretty close to the same as positive +2. So is this just from getting different in reaching?
Yeah, so those teams, the teams that build like there's a fair amount of teams that like still build pretty like the reach and like build unique teams and try like you can see so like the side of the zero that is greater is the teams it's negative. It's because people are getting like a little galaxy brain and building the guys that they want, reaching down versus like it's not as easy to just build the best possible teams. And just kind of ADP your way through it, especially if you're trying to stack and pull some other levers.
So do you get some of that EV back by building a unique team? Although it might be a little worse on the chart. Do you get some of that EV back from building, maybe a unique player that is a scroll?
It's definitely possible. And I think that let's go show the next visual. So the low owned players one. So this is another performance one.
Okay.
Yeah, but let's go ahead to the next slide. So here. So let's scroll a little bit. I don't know why it didn't show up the same way. But anyways, let's go back to the summary chart.
Okay.
Cool. So what this was doing is just counting the number of players on a team that were less than 50% drafted for that week. And you can see here that the field consolidates around 0, 1, or 2. Typically, like the highest common is like you throw one, you have a really good team and you pick one player that's unique, like really cool, awesome guys. You got unique one time, and then but still then like two getting unique twice still happens at a 20% rate. So like it's still pretty common, honestly.
That's got to be high for the amount of people that are doing it too. Like based on the amount of entrants that are doing it and the hit rate, it seems like 20% would actually would look higher if more people were doing it, if I had to guess.
Yeah, and so the field populates around 0, 1, or 2 unique players. But then you can see it really drops off if you're getting at 3 or 4 or more in terms of being used. But for hitting your absolute like ceiling outcomes, the top 25% rate, that really doesn't drop off until like after three unique players. So you can
Mm,
really scroll 3 times and still seemingly get to like an outlier outcome just because of how big the player pool is.
right,
But
right.
it definitely reduces your base. So your top 1% rate goes
Yeah,
down, your top 10% rate goes down. Like
yeah.
you're giving up base projected value
Hmm.
to try to hit a guy that the market thinks is not going to be the nuts, but you think is,
Hmm.
um, which makes a
Yeah,
ton
so
of
it
sense.
goes back to the other slide that ADP value is important for raising your overall high median score, but it's
Hmm.
still showing here that you can still hit the ceiling by scrolling down with three scrolls.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like the field is thinking about getting unique in some fashion, but like they're kind of almost scared to get that to get to the mega extremes. And is that where the edge is? I don't know. Or are we just playing? Yeah, but it definitely seems like the top 20, you can still get there.
It's during the 24-hour live stream. It was Hodge and I in the dead ass of
Hmm.
of the night, and we're drafting a BR, and someone says, "Hey, let's do a challenge here. Don't draft anyone within ADP 30." So ADP 1 to 29. So we take Ferguson with the first pick at 30. We go with Amari Cooper, a Deshaun Watson, and Pickens. And then so the Ferguson was the bring back on the Cleveland game, and then we went Mostert and I believe Mixon. So like we're still finding ways to leverage the Miami game. You're still finding ways to leverage the Houston scoring with the Mixon. And it's just like this is completely viable. I wouldn't recommend it to do it every time, but
Yeah.
it was fun as a single game. And what can we do to make our bet even more correct by leveraging those other highest scoring games on the slate that we expect to at least see a Miami piece almost every single week. And
Hmm.
then Houston, one of the higher scoring games on the slate as well. A fun
Yeah.
little
So like
challenge.
if you go to do this crazy stuff, like it's like you're creating a thin bet. I just do think that like we're gonna talk eventually the it's gonna be pivoting to like uniqueness, and like who can build
Hmm.
like these very viable teams that also don't have the very unowned players too.
Right,
And so what's
right.
what's the limit? And like I think that if you can do half of your team just being like within the bounds of what the market says is the best plays for the week, and then you maybe do the other half kind of as a where you're getting unique or you have like that insight for that roster. That makes sense to me. Like a quarterback, one low owned, either running back or wide receiver, and maybe a low and tight end. That all kind of like that's not that crazy, but you are giving up some projected base. I thought this was like when you look at the ADP value compared to the low owned things, it's like they work in tandem. You can't
Yeah,
talk about one conversation without the other.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Do you have one preference or the other? Do you think there's a happy medium of mixing in at least one scroll to two scrolls? Like if if you're scrolling on two players, right, you're giving up about 10%, or 10% is less of the field is drafting it. Is that more advantageous for you to hit it's about 10% less top 25 rate if less people are doing it? Do you think you make that difference up?
Well, what I would want to do, so we talked about the concept of 100 drafts. I'd be
Right.
very intentional about a large chunk of my drafts being just straight massive value teams. Like, let the room
Hmm.
give me my value. And
Right.
then the
Right.
other intentional being like, okay, I'm going to get some of my uniqueness plays. I'm going to be consolidated around who I think the best unique plays are this week. And I'm going to I'm going to build it that way too. So I think you got to really think about it on two sides of that coin, as a portfolio of drafts.
I like
Um,
that. I like so like
yeah.
I like that. So like through 3 rounds is are you just getting the players to follow you? It's just directly at ADP. You probably know like you're gonna have to scroll once or twice. Maybe it's the bring back. Maybe it's the quarterback that's going undrafted. But
Hmm.
anything's reasonable, and I'll show you
Hmm.
why. When you can take down a battle royale with a Russell Wilson stack with Jerry Judy, and and bring it back with Keenan Allen, a high floor guy, finishes wide receiver one on the slate. anything is truly
Hmm.
possible. So finding those QB stacks is kind of shortening the bet of things you have to get right.
Yeah, for sure.
Dooley said, Billy would love to see this bucketed by percent drafted.
What do you, oh, okay, okay, yeah. Yeah, totally, we can talk on the side for sure.
Of course, Dooley's going to have requests.
Yeah, and so this is, I thought it was an interesting visual just to have the conversation about like when the ADP falls off, and kind of where we got to. So for
Mm,
like falls off somewhere in rounds between pick 30 and 36, and it falls off later for tight ends. So if you think, I think it's this is one thing that like it was a bit of an aha moment for me. Like
mm,
a low owned running back, a running back becomes a lot lower owned earlier than a tight end does. So like if you're picking like Njoku or whatever this week is going to have a decent ownership compared to a running back you're picking that last round.
yeah.
So I thought this was an interesting way to see that.
Yeah, I would think QB would be a little further out there with tight end. We do know like tight ends. You had Jawan Johnson as like one of the higher scoring tight ends last year, week 17. It seems like the tight end and QB positions can fall flat, or there's a week where the highest scoring tight end is 2 points higher, and it's Noah Fant. So
Hmm.
scrolling at tight end, if you're going to put off any positions, I'm not too surprised to see tight end here.
Yeah, for sure. So I
But
thought this was an interesting
I'm also a
visual.
little more surprised that QB isn't further out, because you have those flat
Stretched.
weeks at QB, or you have those weeks that it's Russell Wilson, as the guy who scores 25 and a half, and that happens to be QB1 on the slate, or he's low drafted and you stacked Russell Wilson, and it's the low stack that gets it there, even if Russ doesn't finish his QB1. So there's stuff like that as well.
Hmm.
Um, anything else that you pulled from this, or like wide receiver, running back, pretty lockstep.
Yeah, those. I think it is kind of as expected, kind of. Um,
Yeah,
it just is interesting that how it is an ADP thing. Like it's not a projected thing. It's like even if the running backs are going to be a massive flat projected tier, like it's the one at the front is going to be so highly drafted, and the one at the back's
yeah.
not going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on? And this is just like out there question. Uh, ranks, different ranks, Sims, using those for ADPs for rankings for BRs. Do you think that those projections, like a player like Kamara, who's going to project really well this week, but might not have the highest ceiling, are those better for like dog bowls, or could you still use them in battle royales with 66,000 entrants?
Um. Well, so the Kamara's, I think he kind of has a ceiling, just based on like the amount of targets he can get to. But
Hmm.
I think that like there's one thing about Underdog is great. They have like the morning slate, the late slate. You got the you got all these like kind of like intricate ways to play it. So he may be a guy that might be significantly better in these smaller slates um, that you're not so concerned about someone going nutty on you. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought through the like top one, top six out kind of outcome and what that
Yeah.
means in terms of what people should be valued at from an ADP perspective.
And then we have the low. Oh, no, we already did low
We
own the
talked that.
QB round drafted, and this wasn't too surprising.
Hmm.
Besides round one, yeah, and this goes back to flatter weeks at QB. If that QB doesn't separate, if you drafted, especially last year, if you drafted a QB in round one and it was a CMC week, or it was a Tyreek Hill week, an A-Chan week, those points mattered so much more because of how much more they were separating from wide receiver two overall or RB2 overall. Is that sort of what you got from here?
100%. And it's just that we know that quarterback is not going to separate to the same extent that you'll see a running back or a wide receiver separate. The way that the order is, tight ends are typically the worst in terms of separation, and it can come from anywhere. And then quarterback next. Quarterback, we get better on the projections level. We're going to be tighter with week to week projections for a quarterback, but the worst ones aren't as bad, and the best ones, well, they have really high ceilings. They're part of their best part is their floor is really stable too. Like Jalen Hurts, like I thought he's pretty poor last night, but he still wasn't that bad from a fantasy perspective.
Right, right.
So it's just like that's what like the first round quarterback is. And then I thought it was interesting, like the middle rounds actually isn't so bad from like base projections perspective, and that's because the best plays are again the best plays.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the way I'm going to take this is like I still like the idea of taking a Josh Allen this week if I can get him out of the first round. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's going to be really hard for quarterbacks to, in my mind, to ever belong into the first round. But
Yeah,
yeah,
here's
that
the
was just my
QB list from
takeaway.
this week. If you guys don't know the BR slate, Josh Allen is the clear elite QB on the board. He goes at pick 4 though, and the next highest QB is Stroud at 16. Um, you don't have Mahomes, you don't have Jalen Hurts, you don't have Lamar. If there's going to be a week where QB matters in the first round, Josh Allen can definitely separate. There's less elite QBs he has to play against. However, if it doesn't hit this week, I don't know what week
When will
you
it
would want to
happen?
do it.
Right?
Exactly. When is it going to matter? As you can see, like this, I thought's very interesting. Is the percent that you're giving up to hit that nut outcome of finishing in the top 25 or even the top 1%. So that
Mm-hmm.
separation truly matters. You're going to need that 30-point week plus from Josh Allen this week for it to matter, I think.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
and then do you have the teams that maybe get lucky into a Tyreek Hill, Josh Allen team? Now you can really be cooking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then a lot of people shove in a lot of like round six quarterbacks, and this shows that. And it does pretty well from like a true ceiling outcome perspective. You're able
Yeah.
to when your quarterback does hit from that round, then the rest of your team is in a position to capitalize on it.
Yeah. Then I am excited to see this next year. Do you think we get an uptick or downtick anywhere across the board here for this data? Any projection for
Um,
this year?
well, the if depends on like if people take this or someone else who does this and they kind of run with it, because what this would tell us is that round one quarterback, unless the slate is ideal for it, aka literally
Mm-hmm.
this one, is not a
Yeah.
good play. So that it should move in a direction that is away from a early quarterback. But
Right.
I don't know. Like, does one thing that we talked about off the top is the two running back builds have been the best. They've also been the most heavily used. Does that happen? Even does it get even more aggressive? Like, does
Yeah, I
the
think so.
populate? If that's the case,
I think
like
so.
what's the equilibrium for where wide receiver intentionally smart wide receiver teams becomes the better play. I'm really
Right,
excited about seeing
because
that.
less people are building it now. It's like, okay, I'll
Mm-hmm.
flip flop the sharp crowd. Yeah, it's that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Top 10% rate with QBs in the round 3, round 4s. Interesting. Top 10% rate with even from a floor perspective is interesting. Um, it being lower, but yeah, this was pretty surprising in a way that the 6th round QB hit the highest. I didn't really expect to see that. Is any of that have to do with scrolling and then just leveraging the field? Do you think like someone that goes undrafted at the position and then they're maybe correlating it with one of the receivers and hitting
Yeah.
it that way?
So let's think about it. So you're the top 25% rate. That color is intended. That column is intended to show the outlier, really like one-off kind of outcomes. And then your top 10% rate is more intended to show like your base, like how often it does. So
Hmm.
that your round six is doing worse than in your round 3 and 4. So you're
Yep.
saying on average, these builds, when I scroll and pick a guy who's not agreed upon to play this week, it's going to to, on average, be worse. But I still have the ability to get to that really, really high upside one-off, like because we're scrolling down, we're trying to get lucky. And when it does work, it hits real hard. So that's what this is
Yeah.
kind of showing. Like how I read this is, okay, your base, don't get nutty with the quarterback. Like pick the best plays. Anthony Richardson's
Hmm.
a great play this week.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
but if there's avenues to leverage these lower builds, it's a thin
Hmm.
net.
All right. Billy Jones just said out of his own mouth, Deshaun Watson is a good play this week. Correlate him, correlate him with Jake Ferguson and Amari Cooper. Scroll, scroll, scroll. QB round selected usage. Yeah, it's sort of all over the place. Besides,
Mm-hmm.
round one really failed last year. And are we going to get those pop off weeks from the ADP 1, ADP 2 players that were CMC and a lot of Miami players last year, Tyreek Hill and
Mm-hmm.
Achan specifically? Even Mostert had some weeks in the top 6 last year.
Yeah. So
QB,
just again, all the same visuals kind of showing the same
yeah.
story that we talked about. How the round one, it's not the play.
At the end of the day, correlate your pocket passers. Maybe take a
Mm-hmm.
chance on not correlating a Russian QB, but kind of limiting the things you have to get right with the pocket passers will definitely be important. We did see that even in weekly winners, you had some weeks where it was like naked Jared Goff somehow won a 220,000 person like weekly winners. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how? A lot of those pocket passes though that snuck in naked. There were some Jordan Love teams last year too, and you saw like that was the game he snuck into the end zone. So even if they're not the Russian QB, they still sort of fall into the end zone to get there without a stacking partner. Are you along the lines of stacking, overstacking, clear negative in your mind? If you're going Stroud, double stacking the receivers versus receiver tight end, a lot worse in your mind?
Though my thought, I mean, the general, okay, you want to stack up your passing quarterbacks and the guys that are running centric, you're less inclined to stack. I think it like the overstack again makes it harder because you got in these formats, you this contest we really got to get like close to the optimal. It's
Yeah.
tough, especially because we have smart people drafting teams that are
Mm-hmm.
across the whole spectrum of rosters. So like
Mm-hmm.
they get to there's a lot of people getting to all of the different plays. Um, I think that quarterback, running back, wide receiver is is the hardest because your running back isn't typically going to be directly linked with your quarterback.
Right.
Quarterback, wide receiver becomes a little bit easier, but you kind of like banking on it all being through those two guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Miami can
Yeah.
work ish. Like a team
Yep.
like that could work. And then
Yep.
when you go quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, now we're talking because tight end doesn't have to separate the way that others
Yeah.
do. And if you do get like one touchdown, you get a total of 3 touchdowns between those two players, you're in play. So I think it depends.
Yeah.
Um,
The
but
threshold
yeah,
is much
yeah.
lower at tight end that you have to hit in order to, get your team in the top 1% or top 25 even. But I
Mm-hmm.
agree, like it's if you're trying to balance like Nico Collins and Diggs both having 10 catches, 100-yard games and 2 touchdowns, like they both need to basically hit not wide receiver 2 necessarily, but like optimal flex, and that's just so hard to do instead of betting on one player having the 3 touchdown game or the 180-yard 12 touchdown or 12 catch touchdown game. Um, it
Mm-hmm.
makes it a thinner bet, but doesn't mean it can't happen. We've seen it happen with teams like the Bengals, Higgins and Chase. We've seen Miami. Maybe there's some outliers there last year from Miami. A lot of running back, wide receiver hitting on the same Tua teams.
Mm-hmm.
Mixing those in on a team like Miami.
Yeah, and Texans is an interesting one to me because you can go Schultz and then pick a receiver, and then
Mm-hmm.
if Schultz gets a touchdown and that receiver gets a touchdown, we got like Stroud's probably going nutty too. Like there's a way that works.
For sure.
Um, yeah, so Uh, Definitely not double tapping Miami running backs. That's not something I would think that makes any sense. But
And it hit
they're
last year.
yeah,
Which is
it did.
crazy.
But like, I'd love to. That's when you got to be cautious of this. That's in this data. And like I think
Hmm.
that's one caveat that we got to talk about is always is this is summary data. This isn't simulations. This is just what happened in the
Yeah.
18 weeks last year.
Yeah.
So take that with a grain of salt and remember what happened in the season when we kind of apply it to the season.
When right? When did it happen? They almost scored the most points of any team like in the history against Denver. So it's
Yeah.
maybe that's an outlier. Just
Yes.
maybe we could draw that as an outlier. But if you guys haven't already seen the tool that Josh and I came out with, bestballoverlay.com, we have the Battle Royale tool that is out. It's going to track your combinations as you draft. So if you're worried about duping or seeing your exposure between your quarterbacks that week and a receiver or your first 5 picks. This is an example of it on season long, but on the BR slate, it's going to give you your spreads. It's going to have the weather API up there. It's coordinated to each stadium, has a hover option. So if you just hover over it with your mouse, it'll show you precipitation percent as well as wind speed in the stadium. It'll show you the spread movement across the week. But my favorite tool is definitely tracking the combinations. This saves me so much time. Do you want to draft one, Billy? Do you have a minute to draft a quick BR?
Of course. These things take like
Let's
4 minutes.
let's go. Let's go. I wasn't gonna draft anymore, but here we go. Here we go. It's meant to be. Did it fill last night? No, it didn't. It's close though. We're not getting in the mini. We want the whole thing. +5. Everyone jump in here with us.
So what have been your plays this week? So okay, but also before
I
we get
have.
going, we
Yeah.
have to follow what we just talked about. So 2 running backs is what we're
Oh yeah.
doing. We're going to fade Josh Allen unless it's a big value to us. Come on, guys, give it to us. And then
There it
either
is. There it is.
we're going to either GM or decide to scroll down a little bit
Mhm.
with a couple plays. Well,
Okay,
yeah,
so I've been an absolute spoon. We have 24% Tyreek Hill this week.
okay.
I did get a little lucky at the 2 spot, but at pick 6, I've been going different. Either some JT, 8chan. Like I have 8chan also at 28%.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been mixing him in all over the board, and I am ultimately focusing ceiling. And I know HN's ceiling outcome is 40-point plus game, which can break a slate. So if I'm not getting Hill, Lamb, and then I think you can really do whatever you want in the 3 spot.
Yeah, this seems like an 8chan week for sure. It's kind of like scary as someone I have a single share of 8chan this year from Bestball because of just my commitment to zero RB. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm gonna watch this week happen and I'm just gonna be like, what did you do to yourself?
Those wide receiver twos, or those round 2 wide receivers, look already like they could fail so heavily. And then you have the Barkley. The Barkley, the way he started versus the way he finished, like the bet was like looking so good after the first quarter.
And Josh Jacobs, oh my goodness, I thought it was
Right.
he looked like dust, and all of a sudden it came back.
Is
So
this a
what do you
clear
want to do
CD
here?
Lamb for you here?
I think so.
Okay.
Um,
I agree.
I think he's going to be back to 100%. I also don't know where else they pass the ball to without him, like operating as his full usage. So, let's call it a day with that.
Now, Chase, he was seen in an interview saying if he does play, it'll probably be like limited, which is so strange for him to say. So is he just trying to check the box of like, oh, I played, like can't find me, or what's going on there? And then you have Higgins. Is he ruled out yet
I
officially?
think, or was a question? I don't know.
He's
Doubtful.
ruled doubtful on Underdog. It's not looking good.
Is
So
Chase just trying to like troll like this whole time? Like, I don't know. What's he
he
doing
has
here?
so usually he wouldn't have any leverage with 2 years left on the contract, but
Mm-hmm.
With next week being the KC game, Adam Schiff brought up a pretty good point that like that could have playoff implications of home field advantage in the playoffs. Like that could be season determining. So if you don't get something done and he does decide to just hold out those 2 weeks, that could be punishing. That could cause a lot of bad blood. Now, Lamb, if I want to go here and I want to add Evans, I can see what my combination percent is between these two players before I even draft them.
Mm-hmm.
It's at 5%. This is against our portfolio as a whole. We're eventually going to change this as an update in the next few days that it'll just say teams that have Lamb
Let's
and
do
Evans.
Evans. I like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's the guy that I want to be heavy on all different combos this week. I'm at like, I think I was at like 40% or something close to it. What would you like to do with this Glixer?
Um, I think so. Kenneth Walker's a great play this week. I do
Mm,
always have like nervousness about getting like caught at tight end, but then we also just had a conversation about how tight end fails so often. So I don't know.
ooh.
Um,
I actually
let's
have
say
none of this
ETN.
combo with ETN, which is interesting. I'm going to have a
Yeah,
ton of Tyreek Hill with ETN. So maybe getting that leverage spot with Lamb, even though it's not different. Well, this is one of those examples that through the first 3 rounds, we didn't have any ADP values. So now we have to find a way to make a scroll click make sense.
yeah, and um, so we're gonna fill a tight end. We're filling a quarterback,
Mm.
and likely a running back. I'm assuming. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's multiple ways. There's multiple ways we could play this. We don't need to game stack. We can
yeah,
with someone like Jerome Ford and then go Dak if you wanted to game stack. Or
yeah. I wonder.
we
I
can
think
just
game
get
stacking
completely away
is
from it too.
valuable. It's just do people move players up ranks like too far to game with the game stacks is my
Hmm.
question. Um, yeah. If we can get Kenneth Walker, do you want to go there? Or would you rather scroll down for a running back? Like a
Yeah.
Jerome Ford's a fun one. As like if you're going to game stack and a lower owned. Um,
I'm almost double the field on Kenneth Walker, so you don't need to
okay.
you don't need to sell me on K Walk. This week,
Nice.
especially with unknown with Charbonnet, like you could see 80% plus of usage for K Walk.
I I'm a little. I don't really want to go. What's it called? Dak on this team, just because I do think Cleveland's a good defense and that hasn't changed.
Hmm.
So yeah, but let's go Kenneth Walker.
How about is this a Jaden Daniels team
I was
with
thinking
Evans?
so. I was thinking so. That's a fun like bring back, and you don't need to stack him at all.
Looks like Charbonnet sidestepped the injury report, but I still feel like there's gonna be something there that limits him.
And Kenneth Walker's had such great buzz all like off season. Like this is like a. I feel like week one is okay. We're gonna get the guys we've been talking about all off season, or like the new addition. Saquon last night going nuts was like obvious. I feel like because he's new to the team, they're gonna get him involved. Like we got to get our piece like going. This happens. I feel like every year with these new guys. So like I don't know. Kenneth Walker feels like he's in that position.
And through the first quarter with like 8 yards, it wasn't looking like
Mm-hmm.
Barkley was going to get going, but they eventually, you know, he ended up scoring 3 touchdowns, right?
Barkley 3, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, could have been 4, but they fumbled at like the 3 yard
The
line,
fa- his first rush
2 yard line.
face plant that was like so funny when he
Yeah,
just gets like 5 yards in the backfield,
that
whack.
that field was tough. That field was tough. But at the end of the day, these
Yeah,
guys are professionals. Like figure it out. How about a little Janu get a piece of Miami scroll? What do you think about these tight ends?
that's a ton of fun, and I think that Johnny's like he's going to be way underowned in general. Um, I think that's good. I think also if we weren't going to do him, let's do him though. I do like Brock Bowers on this slate. It's like the same
Hmm.
concept of a He's new, he's young, everyone's like, what are you doing selecting him? You drafted a tight end last year. And be like, I'll show you what I'm doing with him.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he has a he comes out and has a great first week. So that was a thought as well.
I'm gonna rip one more. If you don't have time, you can feel free to dip.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel like I'm holding you.
No, I'm down.
Let's get another. This would be another community draft. The rake back hit hard, which is nice. A little refund, re-up the funds here from Underdog on the season long best ball, which is always nice.
So I'm
Shout
not
out to
telling you what I'm doing. I'm
Ooh.
going to give you the hands this time.
Ooh. Shout out to Nez. Came in second in the Palooza. The great lineup. I wish I did more. I only did 3 total Paloozas, and I ended up with 2 Barkley likely teams. So maybe that was best case scenario. But yeah, no crazy finishes. Oh, are you in the 1 spot?
I am.
I was like, my mind was just blown. There's another Billy Jones out there that it always throws me off. I'm like, is this one Billy?
I think was it Billy Joe maybe. I really wish I could change my username.
A lot of
I
people
did
do.
that. I did that when I started creating. I didn't know when I started doing this a year and a half ago, like creating content. I had no clue what I was going to do. I'd finished my master's in data science. I was like, I like fantasy sports. Let me start doing data stuff with that. Like I don't have a master's to do anymore.
All right,
And so I started
what would be the name? Would it be your Twitter?
probably something sports like Sports Viz BJ. I think that's a little bit better. Um, I wouldn't do anything like crude or like that crazy. Just because I don't know, I'd be so embarrassed.
So it wouldn't be like Rashi Rice's driver school or something.
No, but I do have one of my fantasy teams. I have Harrison Bucker, so I have Harrison Bucker's Kitchen.
Jeez.
That's the team name for that.
Oh, he goes beige. I was gonna fade Josh Allen. I think I'm going to. Let's go strictly by the data here. And we'll see what Mo and Jet does. But yeah, Nez hit a nice 4Ker last night. I also saw Brian Bonner from the Pound as well hitting. Man, did he come in like 5th on the slate? So he had a nice night as well.
So, question: do they do a new primetime Palooza just kind of rolling? So that you do like the Thursday Friday game, then they'll do the Friday
Yeah,
Sunday night game,
yeah.
and they do the Sunday
And then
night
Sunday,
Monday game. They
Monday.
just keep.
Yeah.
And do they ever
Yeah.
do they do Monday Friday, like the
Uh,
Monday night and
I
the
know.
following Friday
No,
night
I believe
or Thursday
we
night?
haven't seen. We haven't. Oh, geez. Okay. Well, now you guys are forcing me to go Josh Allen. Not that it's unique, but I don't know about Fridays because how many Friday games did we have last year? There
Well,
wasn't
that's what I meant. I meant like
Thursday, Monday,
Friday.
Thursday. I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah, I
Okay.
believe they do make that jump. Yeah, like it's not unique. It's not unique. It's not cool. Yeah, the Monday, Thursday they do. Yeah. But if you guys haven't already signed up, bestballoverlay.com, promo code Pounders, all caps, for 33% off. Literally $20 a month. You get 4 slates. I can just quickly see my ownership between these 2 players. We'll let Billy think. See, this is why we go lamb. This is why we go lamb with ETN right here. We're leveraging Billy. Billy leveraged himself, covering all angles on the live stream.
Well, that is what was so good about like.
You guys are doing it for me, huh? You guys are doing it for me. Do I have one of these? I'm like checking my Pokemons here. Wow, no, I don't. I have no Allen Taylor, Mike Evans teams through 3 rounds. This is fun. I'm having fun.
Do you like? Are you intentional about like I want this trio in some fashion, and then like you make sure you checked it off in your portfolio?
Yes. Like there, I will have set team bills that I write down. And I'm like, I want this, or I'll think of a back stack or something, or some QB stack that's gonna be low owned, and I'll like write it down so I remember it, and I will like check the box. But
Hmm.
if I'm getting unique through 3 rounds, I don't care who my next plays are. I'm just going to get the hashtag my guys on a team like this. That's a like a GM type team.
Hmm.
Now I just want to get my guys.
Oh, I was going to go Anthony Richardson and stack him with Michael Pittman. That's sad that he's gone. I need to learn to be the one thing I have. I feel like a good sense of like drafting best ball teams when I can push people manipulating stuff. I have like I don't have any sense. Is it like consistent like week to week on like being a when you can push players, or is it just like certain weeks people are just like
Dude,
obsessed with certain players?
it's very different every week, is what I've noticed. Um, I'm gonna go James. No, I suck. I suck. I suck. I suck. I suck. I suck. Dude, I forgot I had Allen. All right, this is the
This
week.
this
James
it can
Cook. You want
happen.
to? Yeah, it's the fade the wide receiver week in Buffalo. I was literally going to try to queue up Adams, but this is gonna be the week that James Cook gets the receiving tutty. It's a thin bet because you need Allen. You need Allen to get in the end zone at least once, and you need him to separate. So how does he do that? I probably need like 50 yards in the air. James Cook needs to put up like at least 18 to 20. Oof. Oof. That probably should have either been Marv or Devontae Adams. Marv for the stack, or should just went Njoku, but the next pick's just going to be a scroll. So this is the interesting thing, is a lot of people were mixing in Shakir, and I
Hmm.
guess I have one or two, but I was very hesitant to mix in Shakir because of the chance that you have Curtis Samuel play. And I don't think you're going to see Samuel play at some 80% snap count rate, but does he still hurt Shakir enough that Shakir now becomes a bad bet? Right.
Hmm.
It's like
I
that's
think
that's some
I,
that's some of the stuff
I
like you can wait on towards the end of the week to now draft your Shakir teams if you want, instead of taking those teams early.
yeah, it's tough. Especially knowing that you already have the cook. Do you want to kind of overbuild that team, or are you just going to hope that you can fall into the other ancillary pieces you need to make it work? Keon Coleman, he is so fun. He is just so fun. We all want him to
I
do well.
I need to find a way to make this one work now. That's what that is. I need to find a way to make this one work.
Hmm.
Josh Allen has a huge game to get a big lead on Arizona. James Cook runs out the clock. That's the hope. Oh my.
Well, you're just praying that Josh Allen is not a part of the rushing game this week.
And still separates.
Yeah. Okay, I think this is.
Who was the last click?
Did Jerome Ford. So my
Nice.
roster,
Nice.
yeah, my roster it was where is okay, cool. So I went Tua. Started off with Tyreek, then Travis Etienne, went Kyle Pitts, and then Malik Neighbors, Jerome Ford, and Tua.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Are
Hmm.
you doing anything to track your ownership between stacks or between wide receiver combos or anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've only thrown in. That was my fourth draft this week. There's be future weeks which I'll be much more in volume, and I have my own stuff that I
Mm-hmm.
run on my computer to do all of
Mm-hmm.
my combinatorial and like my draft flows and stuff. Um, so
Is
I
it
do have
on?
some of my own.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
Mm. Do you use Excel, or is it just something completely separate?
I write my stuff in R, and then I go go there.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
See, that's what you can do.
this whole thing, this whole initiative, my Twitter was, I do what I do for work, but I do want to like play with other things, and like I just don't write in traditional like I think data science like R and stuff. So at work, so I
Yeah.
was like, okay, what can I do that's different? Um, and like work on visualizations, and I have a bunch of tattoos, and so like I love like colors and stuff, and so I thought this was a good
Hell
way to
yeah.
play with it.
Hell yeah. Well, Billy, appreciate you coming on, dropping some absolute knowledge. If you guys are just jumping in, make sure you rewatch the beginning. If you guys want to learn how to crush battle royales this season, make sure you give Billy a follow on the Twitter machine. Let me link that real quick. And then, Billy, do you have any final thoughts for the people watching?
If you have any thoughts from today and you want me to research it, like Dooley had a question in there, I do already have that together for him. So definitely reach out to me, or if you want to collab on stuff, I'm always down. And if, yeah, reach out to me on Twitter.
Hell yeah. Always down for making good content, and we'll have to hit up Treehouse soon and really create some good content.
Yeah.
Go live from the brewery there. But
Yeah. Draft
Billy,
one, really in line, draft like 2 hours later, very creative.
right. A fellow masshole. So a lot of fun. Always fun when you come on. I always learn a thing or two as well. So I'm happy to have you. And guys, check out his Twitter, because you're also going to be able to find all those posts that we went over earlier on his Twitter, which is posted. Link is in the description of the video, links in the comments. Thanks for everyone coming out. If you enjoyed today's episode, go down, slap the like, hit the bell for notifications, do the thing, and we'll catch you on the next one. Pounders.